The Ninth Amendment, protecting rights not listed in the Constitution. What the Ninth Amendment says: the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. In simpler terms, just because the Constitution lists certain rights doesn't mean those are the only rights people have. On September 17, 1787, the writers finished creating the Constitution, but not everyone was happy with it. Out of 55 people who worked on it, only 39 signed it. Some important leaders like Elbridge Gerry, Edmund Randolph, and George Mason refused to sign because they thought the document wasn't good enough. Pursuant to Article 7, the Constitution needed 9 states to approve it before it could become law. During the ratification process, many people complained that the Constitution didn't protect individual freedoms enough. It didn't have a Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists were people who opposed the Constitution because it didn't protect individual rights. Important leaders like Patrick Henry, Samuel Adams, and George Mason led this group. They refused to accept arguments that a Bill of Rights wasn't needed. They argued that future governments might think they could take away rights that weren't specifically written down. They believed the Constitution needed clear protections for the freedoms promised in the Declaration of Independence. Americans owe a huge debt to these opponents of the Constitution. Their demands during state meetings forced the supporters to promise that amendments would be added to protect individual rights. The states suggested over 150 different amendments. The Federalists, people who supported the Constitution, first argued that a Bill of Rights wasn't necessary. They said the new government would only have the powers specifically given to it in the Constitution. These specific powers are called enumerated powers and are mostly found in Article 1, Section 8. The Federalists believed a Bill of Rights could be dangerous, as it would be impossible to list every single right, and leaving some out might make the government think it could violate those unlisted rights. The Federalists promised that after the Constitution was approved, they would add amendments to address people's concerns. With that promise, the Constitution was approved. In 1789, the Federalists controlled the first Congress and kept their promise by sending 12 amendments to the states. James Madison was the main author of these amendments. Madison faced a challenge: how to protect all rights when a complete list was impossible. Madison's solution was the Ninth Amendment, which said that people kept rights beyond those mentioned in the Constitution, and also providing explicit protections for the most important freedoms. The Ninth Amendment implements the principles of the Declaration of Independence, which said that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. This meant that human rights existed prior to government and weren't granted by government. The amendment reflects the founders' natural law beliefs and connects to the Declaration's recognition of the law of nature and of nature's God as the foundation of the United States. This was influenced by thinkers like John Locke. The founders believed that people had inherent rights that existed before government and couldn't be completely listed in any document. The Ninth Amendment directly addresses the concern that listing specific rights might give government power over unlisted rights and works as a rule for interpreting the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment makes clear that the list of specific rights in the Constitution is not a complete list of all rights that people have, is not permission for government to violate rights not clearly mentioned, is not proof that unlisted rights are less important or less protected. The Ninth Amendment creates a system where the government has to justify why it is limiting people's freedom, rather than people having to prove their rights exist. The amendment makes sure that the Bill of Rights is a starting point, not an ending point, for constitutional protections. The Ninth Amendment provides the basis for recognizing unenumerated rights that come from both natural law and the country's legal traditions, that these rights have always existed, and no government power can eliminate them. Examples of important rights, not listed in the first 8 amendments. The right of free association. This goes beyond what's covered in the First Amendment and includes the right to form close relationships and maintain personal connections without government interference. The right to the presumption of innocence, being considered innocent until proven guilty. The right to a fair trial, getting a trial that follows proper legal procedures. the right to privacy, including personal freedom in intimate relationships. Parental rights, parents' rights to control their children's upbringing, education, and welfare, including decisions about schooling, medical care, and religious teaching. Bodily autonomy, rights related to medical decisions, refusing unwanted medical treatment, and maintaining physical integrity. Right to travel, the freedom to move between states and choose where to live, recognized as a basic liberty that existed before the Constitution. These rights and others are never mentioned in the Constitution, but the Supreme Court and society generally recognize them as having constitutional protection. This matches the founding philosophy of the Declaration of Independence. For over 170 years, the Supreme Court did not use the Ninth Amendment to declare a law unconstitutional. In the 1965 case of Griswold versus Connecticut, the court ruled a law limiting married couples' access to contraceptives was unconstitutional. Justice Arthur Goldberg's concurring opinion specifically used the Ninth Amendment, arguing that the right to marital privacy was among the unlisted rights retained by the people. This case is the foundation for modern privacy protections and extended these protections to actions by state governments through the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. The Ninth Amendment influences modern debates about government power and individual rights, including marriage, medical decisions, and basic freedoms not explicitly listed in the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment acknowledges that human rights are broader than any written document could list, and instructs courts to protect unlisted rights. Protect your freedoms by spreading awareness about the vital Ninth Amendment. Help combat constitutional illiteracy by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to Constitutional Soundbites.